Okay, now we're doing question 65, and we have to find the exact value. And so this, we're going to claim theta equals the inverse sine of negative 1/2. And so keep in mind the range for the inverse sine is negative pi over 2 is less than or equal to theta, which is less than or equal to pi over 2. So we're just talking about the first and fourth quadrants. Anyhow, so now let's evaluate the composite of the sine function and its inverse. So we'll take the sine of both sides, and so we have the sine of the inverse sine of negative 1/2. And so since we've taken the composite of a function and its inverse, we get back negative 1/2, what we started with. So theta equals, and theta is going to, 1/2 is the reference angle. That's the angle in the first quadrant that would give us a value, in this case, of 1/2, is pi over 6, but it's negative, so it's going to be, we're going to be at negative pi over 6. So then theta equals negative pi over 6. Consequently, the inverse sine of negative 1/2 is negative pi over 6. Now let's do B. And we've got to evaluate the inverse sine of 1 over root 2. So the inverse sine of 1 over root 2, and we'll say that's theta. And now we'll take the, the inverse sine of 1 over root 2. So we'll take the sine of both sides, and when we take the sine of the inverse sine of 1 over root 2, we get 1 over root 2. And so the angle we're interested in is going to be in the first quadrant, and as you well know, theta is going to equal pi over 4. So therefore, the inverse sine of 1 over root 2 equals theta, which is pi over 4. And we've got that one done. Now let's do, and by the way, this was B. Now let's do C. And we've got the inverse sine, theta equals the inverse sine of negative root 3 over 2. Root 3 over 2. And so it's going to be in the first the fourth quadrant because it's negative. So we've got sine of theta, taking the sine of both sides, is going to equal negative root 3 over 2. And so the sine of pi over 6, pi over 3, or 60 degrees, is root 3 over 2, but it's negative, so going to be negative root 3 over 2. And what's that angle? Well, it's going to be negative pi over 3. So theta equals negative pi over 3. Therefore, the inverse sine of negative root 3 over 2 equals negative pi over 3. And we're done.